The decision that she had to make was, do I want to be operated by a human or do I want to be operated by a robot?
The reason for that is that Grok and XAI taken a step back, which I have interpreted as, okay, we're not a frontier model. We are one step behind. We need to have a good look at what we're doing.
Elon has an advantage, but he's also opening up for Google to deploy data centers. Maybe he becomes the EWS rather than the AWS in space.
It's really amazing. I have to say, GPT 5.5 is freaking insane, and it is right up there with Opus 4.7.
You come up with the movie Memento. Think of AI as it's somebody that has no memory. If you don't give it a memory, it cannot really function well.
Because companies are all preparing, executives are all preparing for the past. They're not preparing for the future.
The ones who are making it did not delegate this. They sat down with the tools themselves. They tested, broke things, rebuilt them.
From film to robots, ethics to code, automation dreams on every road.
Welcome everybody to a new episode of the Singularity Service, the #1 podcast on technological change in the Netherlands. And we talk about what is coming, what it means, and what to do. My name is Patrick, and as always, I'm joined by Aragorn Meulendijks. Welcome, buddy. How's life?
Yeah. Well, life comes with ups and downs.
It surely does. It's waves up and waves down.
Exactly.
Is there anything in the past week that stood out for you that caught your attention?
Well, yes. For those that have been following us, they know that I went really deep. I was going to say deep. Maybe I need to beep that out, but into Claude Code. And it's been like 2.5 months now that I've been, really going for it. And in the last several weeks, a lot of people online were complaining, me included, that you really couldn't do much anymore because you'd be running out of tokens. And I already ran the most expensive subscription, and it even drove me to get a second subscription, running 2 subscriptions.
Yeah. To
kind of get enough work done.
And the reason you do that is because tokens are more expensive than a subscription, right? So it's cheaper that way if you have 2 separate subscriptions for 2 different machines.
Yeah, so that is a whole nother conversation we could have a whole hour of talking about, because the point is that if I am to believe my own Claude Code setup, I have 2 subscriptions of $200 a month right now. So that's 170 euros each. But with those, I have spent over $10,000 in tokens. And that's basically token maxing, right? So me trying to get absolutely the most out of it. But the thing with that is, once you realize that, is that one, I was complaining about not getting enough tokens before. Now, because Anthropic made a deal with Elon Musk's SpaceX, they have gotten access to the Colossus data center. So they got a massive amount of extra compute. And the reason for that is that Grok and XAI basically taken a step back, which I have interpreted as, okay, we're not a frontier model. We one step behind. So we need to have a good look at what we're doing. They had quite of an exodus of experts as well. They have a restructuring of the organization. So there's a lot of stuff going on there, which we could talk about. Now, because they did that, I'm considering switching one account over to OpenAI's Codex, which we'll discuss later, because it's really doing amazing. I have to say, GPT 5.5 is freaking insane, and it is right up there with Opus 4.7, and in some ways it's even better when it comes to multimodalities.
Hey, about that Colossus move, a complete data center from Elon Musk to Anthropic, is there not more behind it? Well, this is of course a rhetorical question, but
there's always more behind it.
So we covered it in our newsletter from past week, but we didn't not personally discuss it in detail. But what we wrote in there was the fact that maybe it is also a jab to OpenAI, giving this space specific to Anthropic with the whole lawsuit that's going on there between Elon Musk and OpenAI, giving Anthropic more a tailwind to go even further, even faster. That's one of the things. And what's also eye-opening, we also have been talking a lot about the fact that Elon has an advantage, but he's also opening up for Google to deploy data centers in space. So maybe he becomes the EWS rather than the AWS in space, providing data center capacity to other vendors. I didn't think of that myself, but it looks like a move in that direction.
Yes, well, both of you and me also listen, of course, to the Moonshots podcast with the Amandas and the boys. And they were also talking about this. I think that Elon Musk and his SpaceX company are supremely positioned. They control what now looks like the entire infrastructural stack required for the expansion of AI data centers, compute, and all of that. And I think, yeah, they are seriously going to be competing with the other players, the AWSs of this world, Google, in terms of providing compute to AI companies in the future. I mean, Terafab is, of course, still has to be built, but we know how fast Elon can move. And his Terafab initiative basically brings massive chip production capability to the United States. Now, the only thing there is that I'm wondering about is the lithography side of that, or should I say the technological path to making chips. I mean, this is not, by the way, investment advice, but I have already been going into photonics. I've been going into spintronics, which is basically new technologies that work in different ways than traditional silicon wafer chips based on electron transmission or stream. So the question is what's going to happen there. But if he pulls it off, which I think he can, then he will have chip building capabilities. He will have robotics in-house. He will be automating everything. He has his own AI, which he has global internet coverage. He's the only person in the world that can actually launch at scale into the atmosphere or into. So yeah, it's incredible to see there. I am buying Tesla because that right now is the only way to get exposure to all of this, even though it's not directly SpaceX and they have an IPO coming up when I can, at least, even if it's just a few euros, because I think this is going to be the first $1 trillion company in the world. Yeah. So it's an incredibly interesting thing to see what's going on there. And everybody should be paying a lot of attention because this is going to shape the future of humanity.
Yeah. Hey, and do you now have sufficient tokens? Or are you still hitting ceilings?
I have to say I haven't been hitting it as hard for this weekend because on Saturday I had a booking and on Sunday I took a kind of a day off. So right now I'm sitting very comfortably at 3% of my 7-day window on one account and 32% in my 7-day window with 3 days left in my second account. So it seems that with the new token limits, it's very hard for me currently to hit them. Yeah. But, I'll find a way to spin up like 200 agents and burn through that.
Of course, we also did a vibe coding masterclass for DPG, and we used the free accounts for that. And we did quite some extensive work on that. And you see that limit approaching. Oh, can we finish the job or not? It was quite funny. But let's park that for a second. There's another story that I would like to share with you, because sometimes you enter a place and you see the future unfolding right before your eyes is maybe the best choice of words here. My girlfriend has a new eye lens. So this is not eye lasering. This is really a lens replacement. She doesn't have good eyes, -5, -6, and has desired to do this for a long time, and finally she made a decision. So we went to a place, and then you just get they're going to look into the eye and see if everything is work. And then you have the day of the actual procedure. And we went into this, I wouldn't call it sci-fi, because from the outside it looks like an industrial building. But the moment you get in there, you have these futuristic desks with a nice receptionist, all dressed exactly the same. And I had the feeling I was walking into a Black Mirror episode. Did you see that last Black Mirror thing for the common people? That they get this high-tech system called Rivermind, and then they have to pay for subscription. Otherwise, they get... it looked like that, right? And then it was just, okay, we go to the lounge, another very exclusive space with drinks. And then just 10 minutes in, eye replacement, 10 minutes out. With a checkup, they measured, well, you have just above 100%. And the decision that she had to make was, do I want to be operated by a human, or do I want to be operated by a robot? It was just a simple decision with 1,000 or 2,000 euros difference. The robot was now currently more expensive because
really?
It gave more certainty. Yeah, well, that was my surprise as well. It gave more certainty than a human. And there you have it already.
That is so weird.
Price premium because there's more certainty into the robot than the human.
Yeah.
But you and I both understand that over time, this will all be robotics, right? And then the price will be lower. But in 10 years' time, what can you do here? Can you have an augmented eye that gives you 125% view or something else? The structure is there already in place, right? It really looked like some kind of factory where you could get your eyesight augmented. Interesting. I wanted to share that.
Hey everybody, if you're listening to the podcast, I really hope you're enjoying it so far, but I just wanted to make sure that you know something, because I don't know if you know, but we do a lot more than just make podcasts. Patrick and me, of course, have our Singularity Service podcast, which we love making and we spend a lot of time on, and we do that with a lot of super smart people that are part of our innovation network, which is our community. And the goal of our community is to bring together people with a lot of experience, but also people that want to invest or people that are building companies, so we get a good understanding of what's going on in the world of AI and innovation, and we also learn from these people. But it's not all we do. We also do our innovation dinners, which you can find out about if you go to www.innovationdinner.nl. And we don't just do them in the Netherlands, although that is where most of our clients are. We do them everywhere in the world, and we're actually looking at a US tour right now with a potential client over there. And if that is not enough, we also have two other initiatives. One is called Exponential Executives, where we build a special masterclass program exceptionally well tailored towards, you guessed it, executives. Because the leaders of the future need to be visionary people that have hands-on experience with agentic AI. And that's what this masterclass is all about. Now, maybe you're not an executive. Maybe you have an organization, you're a manager or a professional, and you think you also should benefit from that. Well, no problem. We got you covered, because we also developed Vibe Code Masterclass, which you can find everything about at www.vibecodemasterclass.nl. Now again, we are located in the Netherlands, but we also work internationally. We have a team for exponential executives and Vibe Code Masterclass in Germany, for example. We're working with clients in Belgium and, like I told you before, even in the US and the UK right now. So if any of that is of interest to you, or you think it could be useful to you, or if you're not sure yet, but you just want to hear us on stage tell the most amazing stories about where the future is headed in one of our keynotes, make sure to reach out to us. You can find us at www.innovation-network.nl, of course, or, just send us an email at aragorn@innovation-network.nl or hello@innovationnetwork.nl to both me and Patrick. That's it for now. Make sure to like and subscribe our show, of course, and send it to your friends and family. If you want to make sure that your parents, your grandparents, your sister, your brother, your cousins, everybody that isn't aware yet of the exponential change that is heading our way, what is coming, what it means, and what to do. That's it for now. Back to the show. It's incredible. And of course, I love it because for me, there's research, there's academic research, and then you do tests, and you have, you have a test a population, and you have 100 or 200 or 1,000 or 10,000 people you interview or you test or you run, and that kind of research. But then there is what we do, which is finding signals, right? Finding signals every day.
Yeah.
And you could say, well, something like this is not statistically significant or relevant. It's one experience. It's anecdotal. All of that is true. And at the same time, this is the kind of thing that I'm looking for. These are the kind of signals in the noise that tell us something about where we are headed. It's like you're on a ship, you're on the lookout, and suddenly you see that first seagull, and oh, holy shit, okay, land is going to be close. That's it. So when you tell me this, I think, yeah, man, it tells us there's so much information in what you told me, because I would have expected the robot to be cheaper, because I would have expected that the reason you get to choose between a robot and a human is because they want to do it with robots, because it's much cheaper for them. They have a higher profit margin, but people probably don't like the robot, so they still offer the option of taking a human so that people can get used to the idea. But if you're telling me that the robot is more expensive, that tells me that that is not exactly what's happening at all. Because why would you charge more for something that is less popular? And they said it's because there's more certainty, because there's a higher degree of of reliability, which is exactly what I've always said. What we've said that will happen when robotics and AI take over and start to do surgical procedures. I just hadn't expected it to arrive in this way. So there's so much there to...
always arrives in a way you don't expect it, right? So the Neuralink thing is the same. That's also where a machine is operating because it's such tiny work that a human cannot even do it. But then all of a sudden, someone who is quadriplegic, those people all of a sudden can control a computer with their mind first. I would have never expected that group to be selected to do that first, right? So it always arrives in a weird, unexpected manner. That's all. There you go.
Yeah. By the way, it's funny because there was an interview with Nolan Orbaugh, the first man to ever receive a Neuralink chip. And he said, there was this week, I think it was with Bloomberg or something, or New York Times. Anyway, I saw it come by and he said his life has changed completely. And it's funny because even when you see him, you can see that he's healthier. Yeah. You can literally tell that he's healthier. This man is still paralyzed from the neck down, but now he can control basically everything in his house through IoT and his computer and everything. And it's completely transformed his life.
Hey, and also what we did last week, we did our vibe coding masterclass for DPG. We did it together with other friends of the Innovation Network.
Yeah, one person we cannot mention because
exactly. I just want.
It's funny, but I'm not going to mention him. But we have a secret trainer.
But this is also about a signal, right? We did so much dinners, presentations for executives, talking about AI, doing small intersections of showing them AI, talking about AI, and they understand, but never really touching AI themselves. Of course, they use AI, they use ChatGPT and everything, but coding something on executive level, we really have people doing it themselves unless they are an engineer. And that's what this whole program is about. And I thought it would work pretty well after an extensive introduction about the whole thing. It was amazing that within 60 minutes, the amount of and also the level of application that were created just on the spot with a Claude free subscription was impressive. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. It was super impressive. It was very useful for us as well to learn more about, the program that we've built and how we've developed it and what works and what doesn't. It's also super interesting to see how much we learn, because when you're in a room with 20 people, you see that all of them have such a different way of approaching AI and dealing with it, which brings me to another point. I also realized this weekend I spoke for the Rotary in the Netherlands, a whole district. So there was like 200 people there. It was very cool. And afterwards, a woman came to me. She said, yeah, I'm a writer and I have questions, etc., etc. And I had a conversation with her and she kept saying, yeah, I use AI. And this is no disrespect to her in any way, but people tell me that all the time. Yes, I use AI. Yeah. But then when you ask them what they do, it really comes down to that they either have a free ChatGPT or they maybe have a subscription, but that's already quite rare, much more rare than I would expect. And then that's how they use it, is they talk to it, they ask it to help them with writing their text, and that's it. And then they think, and this is, again, no offense to these people, but they think that they're using AI.
Yeah.
And it keeps blowing my brain, because this is also what we saw at the Vibe Code Masterclass. This is such a completely different level again. And when you see these people doing it and you see them realizing what is actually possible when you really start using AI, it's mind-blowing.
And you saw that with this group as well, right? Because we did an interview up front and we asked what systems do they currently use. All of them were using OpenAI and they used Gemini because they standardized on Google. There was only one person who used Claude. So that gave us a big head start, because if you never use Claude and then you get to see Claude and you see what Claude can do, that's already nice. Yeah. But also the whole fact that, and you had a great story about that, we often use movies, right, as a reference. And you come up with the movie Memento.
Yeah, with Leonard,
To describe AI as, okay, so think of AI as it's somebody that has no memory. If you don't give it a memory, it cannot really function well. Leonard is the guy that has to tattoo everything on his arms to make to get ahead in life, right? Fantastic movie, by the way.
Yeah.
And that, I think this was the key takeaway. You saw this group of people, well, still even, they will still make a new app and prompt it again from the beginning. But this pivot that people starting to realize how important an actual memory is and how much of your privacy, if you want to call it like that, you have to give up to go faster and have the AI proactively advise you better in what you want to achieve. That is a key differentiator that we touched upon in training, but maybe we can even improve more on that.
Yeah, and I would like to add to that, because you also did something that I thought was brilliant, and it even I was like, oh, why didn't I think of that? Hey everyone listening, it's post-production Aragorn here. If you are already completely comfortable with how OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google work and how the differences are between the chat interface and the agentic interfaces and the command line interfaces, you can skip the next 10 minutes of this podcast. I noticed in our podcast that Patrick and me talk about AI models and we talk about agentic AI setups, and we have started using names in a way that can make it quite confusing for anybody that doesn't really know what we are talking about. And that kind of goes against the whole idea of this podcast, right? We're not just trying to find signals in the noise for you. We're also trying to make complicated topics simple, or make topics that you might think are complicated clear and transparent so that you understand that they're not so complicated. So when we start to use words, intermix them in a way that makes it hard to understand what we're talking about, that's not a good thing. So I wanted to clarify a few things. In the last few seconds of the podcast you were listening to, you heard Patrick refer to Claude. Now the question is, what did he mean? And for me, it seemed rather obvious from the context of the conversation. What he is referring to is not Claude itself, but Claude code. And this, of course, then raises the question, what is Claude and what is Claude code? And what is the difference? And for you, all of our listeners, it's kind of important to know these things, because otherwise you have no idea what we're talking about. So I wanted to kind of make a quick overview, and I've made a visual representation which we will add to the video of this podcast, and there you can have it in a visual breakdown, and that will make it very clear. But obviously not everybody's going to be watching the video, so I will explain it here. So let me start. First of all, there's 3 major AI ecosystems on the front lines. There's many, many, many more, and maybe or possibly you know about this, but the 3 most important ones to know about are OpenAI, which is of course the company that started all of it by releasing ChatGPT in 2022. Then there is Anthropic. Anthropic is basically their main competitor in a real sense, because it was founded by Dario Amodei, who was a former OpenAI employee who came to the conclusion that OpenAI wasn't doing things the way he thought they should be. They weren't doing it morally correct or ethically correct the way he believed it should be done, and therefore he founded a second company. And then there is Google, which is the 3rd frontier player at this time. All of these 3 companies, they have their own models, right? These are models, and every 3 months we are getting new models, and each model will be better than the last. And lately, for the last 2 years, basically, they've been bunny hopping over each other or leapfrogging over each other. So one day GPT or OpenAI might have the best model. The next day, Anthropic might have the next model, or 2 months later, and then Google has the best model. And so they're competing. But this all started with ChatGPT. Often when people say, I use AI, they say, I use ChatGPT. Now, ChatGPT is just the chat interface of one of these companies, and that is OpenAI. So OpenAI has a chat interface. The chat interface is called ChatGPT, and inside of that chat interface, you can talk with different models, but most people usually talk to the latest frontier model that's available in there, which right now for OpenAI is GPT 5.5. So if you say I use ChatGPT, what you're really saying is I'm only using the chat interface to talk to an AI model. And for OpenAI, that is usually the latest frontier model, even on the free tier. But if you say, for example, I use Claude, then what you're saying is I'm using the chat interface to talk to the latest model from Anthropic, which right now is Opus 4.7, or maybe one of the other models like Sonnet 4.6, which is less smart but faster, for example. When you say I talk to Gemini, you're saying I'm talking to the chat interface of Google, and there you talk to their line of models, which are the Gemini models. And their latest model now is Gemini 3.5 Flash. And their last frontier model was Gemini 3.1 Pro. And if you're wondering, yes, Google has 2 model lines. One is the Flash line, one is the Pro line. The Flash line is supposed to be fast and cheap, and the Pro line is supposed to be, super smart and heavy, but takes longer. But even there, sometimes that changes because, for example, now 3.5 Flash is smarter than 3.1 Pro, but 3.5 Pro is coming in 1 or 2 months. So there you have it. Let's not go too deep in that. So that's the first layer. So OpenAI is ChatGPT, Anthropic has Claude, and Google has Gemini. And that's how it all started, because when we started talking to AI, we were talking only to these chatbots and we were getting answers from them. And when you ask people in the street today, are you using AI? And they say yes. 9 out of 10 times what they mean is that they're talking to these AI models through this interface. And most of the time they mean they're talking through a free interface like ChatGPT free or Claude free or Gemini free, which usually means that they're not even using a frontier model of the latest iteration. So they're usually talking to a dumber model or an older model than what is currently the best available. Coming back to the part of the video or the part of the podcast that we just came out of where Patrick said Claude. He said Claude 3 or 4 times in the last sentence. He was not talking about Claude as a chat interface. No, he was talking about Claude Code or Claude Cowork. And this is where it gets really interesting because agentic AI basically is a different interface for the same model. So for example, ChatGPT is the chat interface for GPT 5.5 by the company OpenAI. But Codex is the agentic AI interface for GPT 5.5 by the company OpenAI. And then there's still one layer deeper for the real kind of tryhards and the sweats like myself, and that is Codex CLI, Command Line Interface, which basically is an interface for these models for their agentic AI capabilities that looks like MS-DOS from the 90s or the 80s even. So you don't have a fancy visual interface anymore. You just have a command line where you type and then you give commands to the AI and it goes and works with those. So to break it down, you have OpenAI with the chat interface called ChatGPT, the agentic AI interface called Codex, and the command line interface called Codex CLI, command line interface. And all of these interfaces allow you to work with GPT 5.5. For Anthropic, you have Claude, which is the chat interface for having conversations with Opus 4.7, for example. And you have Claude Code for agentic work, where Opus 4.7, again, is the model, but it can do all kinds of other things, like it can connect to other software, it can do things, may have skills, you look things up, it can execute code, it can do, basically, it becomes a real agentic AI, like I said. And then, of course, there is Claude Code CLI, Claude Code Command Line Interface. Now, for Anthropic, it's extra difficult because they have one more option, which is Claude Cowork. And Claude Cowork is basically their app interface for Claude that is not specifically built for coding, but is built specifically for people doing work and kind of normal things. So it's Claude Cowork is basically like your personal assistant that can take care of your Excel sheets or your PowerPoint or your Word files or your administration or your finance. But at the end of the day, the model is the same. It is still Opus 4.7 underneath all of that. So it's really just like a harness. That's what we call it. It's like a harness around the model that you use to interact with it. And then finally, there's Google. And Google has Gemini as the chat interface, which is also on your phone. And then there's AI Studio or Anti-Gravity, which is the 2 options you have to interact with the agentic AI. Or since this week, Anti-Gravity CLI command line interface. Codex for OpenAI is Claude Code for Anthropic, is Anti-Gravity for Google. Now, one more thing. A lot of these companies are trying to integrate all of these more and more, of course, right? Ultimately, Google specifically, because of their capabilities and their massive stack, they want you to completely forget where the difference is between Gemini as a chat and Gemini as an agentic AI. So ultimately, what I think will happen is that, for example, for Google, your Gemini interactions will basically also be agentic AI interactions, where Gemini will take action in your email, in your photo albums, in your Google Drive, etc. For Anthropic and OpenAI, that's a little different because they don't have that full stack yet. You don't have an Anthropic drive or an OpenAI drive yet, and you don't host your photos there, and you don't have email through them, right? So they need to hook into these systems from outside to allow that kind of interaction. Cool. That was a long intermezzo, and I'm totally aware of that, but I really, really felt that it was necessary for any and all of you that are not fully aware of these differences and might be listening to us and thinking to yourself, what are they on about? So I hope that was super helpful. Thank you. And now back to the show. Because we had different groups working on different stuff. And you might think that somebody that has some coding experience or something has a head start, right? But you couldn't be more wrong, because what we saw happening in the group, and again, these people all did a great job, and I'm very proud of them. But what you saw in the group is that we had one group of two pretty experienced guys, right? Both also, I think, more senior roles in the organization. And one of them had some coding experience, and they tried to build an app. And to be frank, it was a little bit of a shit show. It was very hard going, right? It didn't really go very smoothly. And I didn't realize, because I didn't pay attention at the start and I only saw later, but their opening prompt was build me a React app, which is a kind of coding language with JSON, blah, blah. And so it was very specific, because they used their own experience to decide for the AI how it was supposed to achieve the goal. So they didn't give the goal, they gave the instructions. And then there is what you did with your group, which were two wonderful ladies, content creators, where they didn't have that experience. They were experienced in their own way, but they didn't have that experience. And so what they did is they literally, with your help, formulated what they wanted to get done, what they wanted to get out of it, their end goal. This is what we want to achieve. And then you gave them this wonderful tip, which is, of course, it's being posted on the internet, but people, even me, forget about it. You said, tell the AI to keep asking you questions until it fully understands what you want. And they did that, and they went through that. And what they created in that 2 hours was absolutely so mind-blowing that the client said, okay, we're going to use this for production in real time. We're going to finish this project. Yeah. So that shows you, it's all about mindset. You can do anything you want, but it's about mindset.
Also experience, right? We have to acknowledge that we do this 24/7 with all kind of different models. And then you learn how to speak to these models. Literally speak, because if I now have to refer back to typing, that's frustrating. And you do this training and these lovely ladies indeed got all these questions and literally sat down like it was a job interview, typing the responses, very eloquent about what they wanted to achieve. Well, I would go very staccato in my wording, knowing the fact that my AI will understand me as I do that. So you have to get experience in how you talk to AI, right?
Yeah, and you have to, you just have to do it. And yeah, like you already said it. The whole Leonard comparison is so important, because 90% of people that work with AI don't even realize this. If you talk to an AI, it is a super genius, but it has no memory and no understanding of where it is, where it woke up, who it's talking to, what's going on. Not all of that's gone. So you need to provide that. And that's what vibe coding is all about. Vibe coding is about building together with an AI to create a harness, right? So that every time it wakes up, it can look at its tattoos and say, oh, this is me. I'm Shelby in my case with my AI. I work with Patrick. Patrick has Innovation Network, and they're trying to achieve this, and this is what we're going to work on today. And once it has all of that, and you can automate all of that, once it has all of that, it becomes not once, but twice as intelligent. And that's the thing that people also don't realize. And this is the massive difference between talking to ChatGPT in your app or having your Claude Code or your Codex set up with these kind of markdown files so that it has all of this context, those tattoos, that takes it to a whole new level.
Refer to markdowns as tattoos from now on. Hey, let's move on. While we're talking about Claude and Anthropic, there's now been a report from RAMP that they, for the first time ever, have more business revenue than OpenAI. OpenAI was even declined. So you have it here on the screen. They are now at 34.4%. And OpenAI at 32.3% of an overall of just over 50% penetration in the enterprise market.
Yep.
Basically. This is an interesting shift, right? So really people are starting to, because Anthropic is very powerful in coding, right? Exactly this process that we've been talking about, that more organizations doing it, playing with it. We still have a lot of organizations that have standardized on Copilot or on Gemini, and then bringing into a new model raises IT discussions, and that go very slowly. But this also points in another direction, which is actually good news, I think.
Yep, I agree. But it's just so super interesting, right? Because we just discussed Claude Code usage, tokens. In the last few weeks, a lot of people, just before Claude announced, okay, we have more compute, we're going to double token limits. I read Reddit a lot as well. And on Reddit, everybody was hating on Claude. Like, people were posting every day, I'm gonna stop using Claude Code. I can't do anything. I don't have enough tokens, right? And then OpenAI came out with the GPT 5.5. And you could see the posts rising, like, oh, Codex is amazing, because people went back because you get way more tokens from OpenAI. But then when they were using it, they realized, oh my God, it's already completely on par with Opus 4.7. And you see this dynamic, and it's just back and forth and back and forth.
You have to share a little bit more about your experience with Codex, because I started using it as well. I've tried to make a very complex portal with it, but the interaction with the AI was not as sharp or comfortable as I was used to from Claude. The output was great, so the output was good, but it was. How's your experience? Do you have the same? And is that a memory thing? Is that because I'm comfortable with Claude? Claude knows me. That is the thing, right?
I think there's two things or multiple things at play here. One is the thing that every model has a kind of innate kind of personality, and it's subtle, but you can feel it. And although you can shift it, for example, if you use the Codex desktop app, you can actually, there's an option for that, which I don't think you have in Claude, the equivalent, but you can set up personalization, and I have set it to friendly now. So I'm going to set it to pragmatic, but you can set that up, and you can give instructions for that, which I haven't even filled.
You can do that with Claude as well, but just not with a toggle.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, more importantly, I would argue, is that before I went to work with Codex, because I've spent so incredibly much time on setting up my Shelby, right, which is basically my harness, the equivalent of a Hermes agent or an OpenClaw for other people. I wanted to use that. I'm not going to switch to another model if I cannot use that, because I have so much time invested. Where a year ago you couldn't actually do that because all these models would work with a different kind of, framework or the way they would work with files. So there was still it wasn't consolidated yet. But now you can, the only big difference between Codex and Claude Code is that Claude Code starts from claude.md, a markdown file, and Codex starts from agents.md, markdown file. But that is the first markdown file, and after that, basically, that will redirect. It will say, okay, if you work on software, you need to read this file. If you work on content, you need to read this file. Yeah. That's what that file does, right?
Exactly.
So I just said to Claude Code, I want you to set up Shelby to reorganize all the files and everything so that it doesn't matter whether Claude Code or Opus reads it, or Sonnet or Codex with GPT 5.5, but it needs to work, and it needs to be set up in such a way that it will not break anything for another model.
Yeah.
So, because some references, for example, to plugins or connectors or MCPs might be Claude Code specific, and then Codex would see it and say, well, what's this? I'll just remove it. Yeah. So I have to instruct Codex. You can never remove these things because they are for Claude Code. But once that's set up, it works. And so now my models both work in the same harness, and that probably makes it different for me, coming back to your initial question, because my Codex basically reads all the same prior instructions that my Claude Code would.
There you go. And there was something else very hidden, but I think we should linger a little bit more on that. It makes enterprise buyers less loyal to what kind of platform or model they are using. So if you go back to the era, let's say 90s till 2000, 2005, a company bought Oracle or SAP, and it looked like they were stuck with such an investment forever. Even the license investment was perpetual, right? And then you got the platform era where you got companies like Salesforce, for instance. Still you had vendor login, but moving from one software as a service platform to another is still very doable, right? The lock-in was more on customer experience like that. But now with AI, you can easily switch. And that's also what's going to happen. Why? So a couple of executives that we are talking to are still in this can IT approve it kind of thing, taking a year to move to another model, and are missing out on intelligence if you keep thinking that way.
Yeah, and the crazy thing is that within the SaaS era, you would get this massive harness and everything, and you needed to put all your data in there in the right way. Migrating was hell. I know this because I worked in that sector for the big decade when we moved to the cloud, and when most of that migration stuff started. And it was absolute hell. And so you had a vendor lock-in because you didn't want to spend hundreds of thousands of euros on doing the migration. But the thing has changed completely around now, because now you're at the stage where you just build the harness specifically for yourself that is perfect for your organization and your team. That's where we're going. And that harness, you can just hold. That's your harness, because you're no longer going to be switching the harness out, which is what the SaaS era was about. You're going to be switching the engine out.
Yeah.
Right, which is much easier because you take one engine out and you put another one in, or you make a dual engine, if you want to, because you can do that too, right? And that is a complete shift. And I am 100% sure that all of these companies, both the AI companies and SaaS companies, they're all trying to figure this out. And this is very hard, and I'm sure they're scared shitless, because OpenAI knows that OpenAI went for OpenClaw, right? Because Claude said, okay, we don't want anything to do with OpenClaw. And then OpenAI, jumped on that bandwagon trying to kind of make benefit of that. But the thing is, it's moving so quick. We already got Hermes agent now, and I built my own agent, Shelby, right? So you can see where this is going. It is going to be extremely hard to get any kind of consumer lock-in in any way, the way this is going, because they're building an era where every piece of software is basically custom and you can build it yourself. So how are you going to ever achieve lock-in, right? And this is the challenge that they faced.
And the same goes for determining the winner of the AI race, right? Every now and then, every month, we have this shitload of X posts saying, oh, this is the new winner. Now it's Claude. It used to be Gemini. And then it's OpenAI. This keeps on changing and changing. You never know who's going to be ahead in a couple of months. Google I.O. is going to come out this week. We're recording this before that event. But you have it on the screen there. That's great. So this is announced, right? This is announced for Google AI. Gemini Spark. We don't know officially if it's going to be released, but it's very likely, which is also all about creating a memory for your AI so it becomes more proactively, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that's what all of this is about. And basically, this is just, a next step in what we just discussed. We discussed you need to give it memory. You need to tell it about yourself. You need to provide it with a harness. And the harness is basically a collection of memories where it can find context for whatever you're doing. And of course, the whole trick is going to be for these AI companies, and Google is exceptionally well positioned for this, is to kind of make this standard, automated, and low friction. Because now we tell people it's not as hard as you think, it's much easier than you think. But the fact is that it's still high friction for most people. Because to get Claude Code installed, to start using it, to understand how it works, to, talk to it and then ask it to start building these files, you need to know. Somebody needs to instruct you. Somebody needs to tell you. You need to watch a YouTube video. You need to do a Vibe Code masterclass with Innovation Network and the exponential executives. You need to do that. But ultimately, in 1 or 2 years, all of these companies want to be at a point where it's just second nature. You don't think about it. You just pick up your phone. The AI immediately takes action, doesn't wait for you. So what now is access to Gemini to ask a question of something you want to know is then going to be, okay, Gemini, I need to get this shit done. Can you take care of it? And by the time you get home, that's where we're headed. That's the kind of super low friction that we want to go for. But that means it needs to know everything about its user. It needs it needs to know you like your dog knows you, or like your assistant knows you. It needs to know your behaviors and your
Google
patterns and your preferences.
Knows so much of you already, right?
Yeah.
So they have the perfect workflow for it. They have 2 billion customers. Everybody's using Gmail, G-Calendar, using Google Docs, everything we search, all the photos, everything on YouTube, that's all connected, right? Everywhere you go, all maps, people don't realize that, but we already have all that information stored at Google. And if you give it access to use it as an AI, that's a launch forward.
Yeah,
but it will be, do we trust that? Or don't we trust that? So far, everybody is trusting Google with that information, right? Gmail came out and they said, hey, do you want to use a free Gmail service? Then we allow us to read your email for advertisement purpose. And everybody said, yeah, sure, it's free.
Yep. Well, on that, I know that it's not the order we made this script, but about trust and about AI, we have later on, I wanted to talk about what happened with Eric Schmidt, the former Google CEO. He went to Arizona University to do a commencement speech for the graduates there, and he was booed, not off stage, because I don't think he actually left, but he was technically booed off stage as soon as he started to mention AI.
Yeah, you mentioned it this morning in our prep, and
Yep.
I just looked at the video. But he was severely booed a couple of times.
He was severely booed.
Yeah.
And it was very painful for me to see this. And of course we discussed it and we said, well, let's not make it, draw too many conclusions right off the bat. I have some ideas, but what worries me is that there is this massive negative sentiment growing around AI. And it stems from, I feel that it stems from a misunderstanding of what its potential is and how it will impact our lives. And this weekend, like I said, I did a keynote for the Rotary, and there was people there asking me questions about energy and water. And then I basically gave them the facts, right? Because I've done extensive effort to combine all the research, to combine everything in this website that I made called Compared to What, where I say, compared to what, because I think it's relevant also to frame things. Context, the context window is relevant. And in the context of AI, energy and water usage, and all of that, it is framed in the mass media as being very negative. AI is also being framed very negative in terms of its impact on the job market. It's being framed negative in terms of how it approaches our privacy and what it does to that, right? That's what we just discussed. That's where we made the bridge to this point. In all those ways, it's generally being framed in a negative light. And I don't understand, because why are these people not talking about the fact that we're now getting more and more cancer vaccines, custom-made medication for people also from AI, that every field of science is progressing rapidly because of these AI, that the best theoretical physics professors at the Institute for Advanced Science are making breakthrough after breakthrough thanks to AI. All of this, if you look a little further ahead in the future, you'll understand, well, we might have a transition phase that can be disruptive, but ultimately this is going to take all of mankind to a higher level.
Yeah. So I thought about this in the hour between our prep call and the recording. And you say something like, maybe they don't have a clear understanding of AI, but maybe they have a very clear understanding of AI and understand perfectly well that they, within 2-3 years, actually don't have a job. And that is also what we see in the job market already. So you're finally at university, you want to get to work, and first thing that you really starts to land the moment that you're 21, 22, 23 is, fuck, my outlook is completely different than any generation before me. Then still, then comes the next question: do I trust Eric Schmidt, who is a billionaire on stage and who has everything in control, and he's going to decide if I get some money as well? Is there a place for me in the market somewhere? Can I trust him to come with something like shared welfare or anything like that? I think that is where the anger comes from, the mistrust in that.
Obviously, I think it's very good that you make that case and trying to kind of approach it from this different angle. But I would argue that all of those negative sentiments are still anchored in a short-sighted vision of the future. First of all, it's not only up to Eric Schmidt, right? There's also Demis Hassabis, there's Dario Amodei, there's many people involved. Secondly, the American dream, and this is the University of Arizona, the American dream has always been about, being able to be successful and make it. So it makes little sense to me now that suddenly they're going to be like, okay, yeah, but you're Eric Schmidt, so we're going to boo you. But most importantly, why you wouldn't be upset about maybe not having a job if you understand that in the future nobody needs a job and you will be free to explore whatever dream you have and do whatever you want to. Right?
Well,
so for you to be upset over that, you need to be entrenched in this idea that you need a job, and that's the only way we can have a life.
I agree with that. But that only works if you get something at least as universal basic income. Right?
Yes.
And that is not decided upon. That really is a path that's going. As a matter of fact, we don't see much of that sharing going on. So far, we see all the revenue that comes to the big tech with an argument, we need more because we need more data centers and we need more data centers in space, etc. Not going to share that in a way, right? And then political level also not. So that's, from that perspective, I understand the fear from a 20-year-old
Yeah, okay, but fair enough. But then I come again back, and this is, of course, a broader problem that I have with academia in general and the world at large right now, is that this didn't happen on its own, right? If anything, America has been the nation that has been most vocal and most aggressively pursuing absolute capitalism in the world, right? And freedom. And right. So to be like, it's one thing for me to see the general masses have an opinion. Like, I don't want to be, disrespectful, but a lot of people simply don't have the education or the intelligence to fully comprehend these things. And that's fine. That's always been the case. We have to accept that. That's not disrespectful. These people all work hard. They take care of their families, but that's the truth. But these are not your average people. These are 25-year-olds that finished a academic degree, University of Arizona. These are among the top 10% of most intelligent people in the world, or they should be, right?
Yeah.
If anything, they should have learned then that it is now their responsibility to shape future policy. And shaping future policy is not booing someone off stage that has contributed to the American economy like that just because you don't like what he's saying, right? Then you should have a conversation.
I do agree with that. There's one other argument against it. Well, not completely against it, but looking from a different perspective. Let me put it like that. You and I are 40 plus, right? I'm even 50 plus. We had the opportunity to live a life from analog to digital. We have the opportunity to develop a bullshit detector. Yeah. I can imagine. I see it with my own kids, right? Those are just 10 and 15 that age. It is getting increasingly difficult to understand what is real and what is not, and what can I trust and what can I not. And it takes time, and it also takes work, maybe in some kind of way, and a big social network to develop that bullshit detector in order to make that kind of decision that you desire from them. Set alone the intelligence, that the whole environment that they are thinking in needs to rattle a little bit more towards something new in order to live up to your expectations.
And I think you're being too empathetic to an extent. And so my position on this is that we developed these skills not only because the world was different, but because education was different, better tailored to our time and our age, although it was already degrading. And I know, and even the teachers that I speak with from back then that are still active now agree with this, and it's the same in the Netherlands. But I would really argue that it's not that they still need to develop this skill. They do. But the reason that they didn't develop any of it yet and therefore react in the way they do is because academia has completely let them down. Modern academia is wrought, and I know that this is a controversial topic that I talk about and not everybody agrees with, but I believe it is wrought with a postmodernist mindset that makes everybody into a victim, and it's you're never the one responsible, and critical thinking is no longer part of what you're being taught. You're taught to absorb all of these ideologies that academia have all agreed on. This is how the world works. And that is the problem, I think. That is at the core of this issue. And that's why I'm so worried about it, because if that is the case, and I really hope I'm wrong, and I hope you're right, but if that is the case, then we're going to have a whole generation of people that might turn into a second Inquisition, right? And this time it won't be women put on the stake, burned at the stake for witchcraft. This time it will be the most promising technology for the future of humanity that will be burned at the stake. Just like we burned nuclear energy at the stake in the 70s and the 80s, we will be burning AI and robotics at the stake now because people are convinced that it's going to be evil, and that will set us back 100 years in terms of civilizational and technological progress. And that's what I'm worried about.
Yeah, I understand that worry. Well, it's a fair worry. I don't think it will go that fast. I don't think that will be a bit of powerful, and it's quite inevitable, as Eric Smith tried to tell them in his speech.
But do you understand the irony of you saying I don't think it will go that fast in the podcast about exponential change, right?
I mean, the opposition from the youth, that will not go that fast.
Yeah. No, I know. But again, the same could be true as what is true for this technological change. This ideological mindset might also change society at an exponential rate because it grows and it goes. It's like a virus almost, and I hate to. It sounds really negative, but it is, right?
You're right. Once it hits a tipping point,
Right.
Then it can go all over the globe, and it can change the course of development.
Yeah,
I agree. Yeah,
I know Godwin's law says that if you compare it to the Nazis or the Second World War, you lost the argument. But I'll eat that. Look at the Second World War, right? The ideas that spread in the 30s, they just went viral, and then suddenly a whole nation decided to conquer the whole world, and then it spread to the entire world, where other nations decided to join up. And then that led to the Second World War. These things it's like a bushfire that can go out of control really rapidly. And that's why I'm worried.
Do you have, to wrap this topic up, do you have a practical tip next to your worry? What could help here? What could one do to see that differently, other than just listening to our podcast, of course?
Other than listening to a podcast. So what I love is that Peter Diamandis has already launched the Future Vision X Prize. And I've already told Jan Willem Blom from our community to participate. And he basically said, there's now a prize which already has 15 million in there for the best optimistic science fiction movie about the near future that shows people what is coming. Because his opinion is...
That is not even a tip. That's something that we could actually participate in ourselves. I should have framed it different. What could we do differently? That is a better question. And you answered that already.
Yeah, we could participate, or we could try to do something like that here in the Netherlands, in Europe, with people that are interested. Set up an X Prize to spread the optimistic view and vision and the potential of this technology to the masses, so that people get a more balanced idea of what is going on.
Okay.
I think that's what we should all be working towards.
That is very much in line what we do, and that should be the next topic for the next meetup, I guess.
Yeah.
So now my worry is, how do we get from that topic back to a mouse pointer?
Mouse pointer. Well, just point us in the right direction.
We've been talking Google, we've been talking Eric Schmidt, and this is a DeepMind project, because DeepMind has something cool now. They are reimagining what you can do with your mouse pointer. So what you see here is that you can just point at something, and then the mouse clicks knows where you have pointed, because I have all the intelligence on the screen. So it went very fast, but you saw him pointing on a location and on a postcard, and then the AI just determines, oh, he wants to get from A to B, and I have it in here. So the whole idea is that behind the mouse click, you get your, let's say, an intent detector understanding what you're pointing at. I would love something like that. Do you know how many screenshots I'm screenshotting to Claude every day? If I can just point at it.
Yeah, well, the screenshotting that's one thing, but absolutely. I was playing Diablo 4 last night with my friend Brian from New York, and Brian said, "Oh my God, I can't wait for AI to just see my screen all the time and help me so I can talk to it."
We talked about it so many times. Why is that staying behind?
Let me tell you, don't get me started. You know what? Microsoft was developing this, and because of the massive backlash against AI amongst gamers,
recall that has been recalled.
Well, no. There's two different things here. So, but yes, they're related. So recall is what they were building in Windows to do that in Windows. And it was so that you could always look back. And that got massive backlash because people were complaining about privacy. But they also were building an AI assistant through Copilot, specifically for Xbox, that would be able to watch your games with you while you were playing. But the marketing for it went sideways. And there was even a PlayStation ad that made fun of it. I can probably find it. PlayStation made fun of it because they made it seem super silly. Like the AI was playing for you and you didn't have to do anything yourself anymore. And then it was fucking up your account and deleting your collectibles. And they just completely destroyed it. And this is the kind of marketing that I'm like, oh my God, this is so stupid. This is why would you do this? But it resulted in Microsoft basically slowing down and halting their progress and development of an AI that could be your gaming assistant or AI assistant looking at your screen on both for gaming and for your desktop. And it's just horrible because it's just marketing failure. And all of that has to do with the negative sentiment around AI that we just discussed.
Exactly.
People just think it's bad.
You call it marketing failure, but this is a paradigm shift, right? It is also difficult to market and control a paradigm shift. The shift is already happening quite fast, and sometimes it just takes some time. Even a company like Meta is also doing the measurement of mouse clicks, and their own employees are rebelling against that as well. You have the Google Glass. The first time Google Glass came out, everybody was rebelling about the fact that you could record something outside. The new glasses that we last time discussed on the pod, the new plans from Apple are basically glasses or receptacles that can just record everything for your AI. That happened in 10 years' time. It takes a little bit of time.
Yeah, but there I just don't understand. I mean, the first ever Google video about their smart glasses is already 5 or 6 years old. And what they showed there was a woman who had a mother who was from Japan, I think, or Asia somewhere. And she grew up in the US, and she only met her mother later in life because she had been a foster child, or what do you call it? And then she met her mother and they couldn't talk, but because they got the glasses, and the glasses did live translation with subtitles in the screen, they could look at each other and have a conversation. And this is the kind of thing that people need to show more. This is what these companies need to be marketing. They need to be showing you the incredible kind of experiences and improvements of life that this technology can bring, I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah.
Now, the funny thing is Google DeepMind here in the video that we just showed, he shows two things, right? You said he shows that you can point at something and talk to the AI, and the AI knows what you're pointing at, so it understands the context of what you're looking at through the mouse. But something that they also shows is that they integrated eye tracking, which, by the way, already exists. And I am actually, after I watched this video, you sent it to me, I was like, I'm ordering a Tobii eye tracker, which I don't have yet. And you put it on your screen, and it looks at your eyes, and it tracks your eyes across the screen. And you can use this in games. Like there's some content creators that use it for camera and stuff. But I realized that you can use it for your mouse pointer. And that is freaking crazy because I already have this trackpad here where I write, and I made one button is basically my Claude Code whisper flow. So I just have my hand on the desk and I click that button, and then it starts recording and I click it to end. Now, how awesome would it be if the next two buttons are just my mouse buttons and the mouse pointer is just tracked by my eyes? That would be freaking insane. That would completely transform the way I work with my computer.
Yeah. Well, I hope they announce this as this coming week at Google I/O, and hopefully we get access to it soon. I would love to track that and play with AI on the screen in such a way that whatever you point at, you can just narrate, put this in a deck, what's this about? We had already the circle feature, but this looks way more enhanced.
Yep.
I also wanted to talking about this specific article from, how do I pronounce this? Renan de Livrière. He's probably a French.
Yeah. Hey, well, he's referencing de Gaulle and le fil de l'épée.
Must be French then, exactly.
He must be very French person.
We, every once in a while, there's an article that really stands out. We got this from Jelmer. I loved it immediately. You loved it. Yes. We even used it good. As a red thread through our exponential executives training. Yeah, you go first. What stands out in this article?
Well, it's wonderful because really the whole core of this article came out right at the start here. After the First World War, French generals and military leaders, they had these very organized, very structured meetings and committees to discuss warfare. And its generals dutifully holding committees on how to optimize infantry charges, writing reports on autonomy and initiative and bottom-up doctrine, while the other side, the Germans, were building tanks. And this drives this article essence home in that single opening, because he says what we tend to do, and it's not just warfare, it's everywhere. And by the way, we have seen it again in warfare in the Iran war just recently, is that we have this massive military complex or leadership in any kind of industry where they look at, okay, this is what recently happened. What can we learn from that? How are we going to change everything we do based on that experience? And of course, I'm not saying that we should stop learning from experience. But what we do not do enough, which is becoming increasingly a problem because of the speed at which the world we live in is changing due to the law of accelerating returns and the accelerating technological development, is that we're not preparing for new scenarios.
Yeah.
these generals, they were preparing based on their First World War experience in the trenches, etc. And they didn't realize that in the Second World War, it was going to be completely different. And the Germans would just go through the Ardennes in a single night, where you recently were in holidays, because they had super modern tanks that could go over anything. And they were taking amphetamine so they could walk for 48 hours straight. That's what happened. And nobody prepared for that. So decades of preparing for the next war were completely wasted time. And this is exactly what we're seeing now in the AI age, because companies are all preparing, executives are all preparing for the past. They're not preparing for the future.
And that's one thing. And a lot of them are doing it from a theoretical perspective, right? The best sailors are on shore. That is not an English expression. It's a Dutch expression, but it translates like everybody is an expert from the sidelines. And there is a quote in this article as well. Let me read it out loud. The ones who are making it did not delegate this. They sat down with the tools themselves. They tested, broke things, rebuilt them, asked junior employees embarrassing questions about embarrassment. They wrote code, they built automations, etc. This is about really stepping in, right? You cannot do meditations by thinking about meditations. You have to do the hard work by actually sitting. You cannot think about how it is to run a marathon. You have to run a marathon to do it. It's all the same kind of thing. And that's also the engine under the vibe coding masterclass that we are doing, right? And that's why it hit with us. It's also, by the way, the last chapter of my book, where I talk about know yourself, augment yourself, and connect yourself. Think exponentially, live through it, and connect with different entities that think with that as well. That's along those same lines, and that will kind of completely bring you to that new paradigm.
Yeah,
great article. Cannot recommend it enough. I will put a link into it so you can read it for yourself.
100%.
You get the gist of it now, but that's
yeah. And I yes, and I can only reiterate what you said. I think that we went through an age where leadership could be, to some extent, top down, and it was almost impossible for a CEO or a leader of a company to also know exactly what his employees were working on. Now, of course, still, even in that time and age, you would see the best CEOs, and you even see that at the tech companies today. Which tech companies in the AI industry are doing the best? Well, funny enough, it's all the ones where the founders, the original founders, are still part of the everyday operation. Exactly. They're either on the board or they're still, in charge. Which companies are not doing so well? Well, let's have a look. Apple, maybe? Well, what's going on there? Yes, the original CEO is gone. The accountant took over. And now...
those were the accountants and the corporate survivors took over. Yeah.
Exactly. And so what do you see there? It's about having been in the trenches, right? It's about having come up through an organization, having built it up from the ground, understanding everything that comes in to that. And even if you don't understand what is coming exactly, if you have been all the way down in the trenches, you have a better understanding of how important it is to understand what is coming if you're in that position. And that is what is lacking. And you could get away with that over the last decade or the last century, because of how difficult it was to actually understand everything that was going on in your company, because there was so many specialism going on with all your employees. But now we're in a different age. Everybody can vibe code. And so agentic AI is going to be on every level. And you no longer require specialist understanding. You just need to understand the dynamic between your human employees and that AI. And the only way to fully comprehend that is by doing it yourself.
Move to
amen to that.
Yeah. So let's move
I'm sure 500 years ago I would have been a priest.
You asked for some more positive news about AI, right? So
yes.
The topic that then always comes to mind is AI is going to solve all diseases. And we made another big step in that direction. And again, from the lab from DeepMind, that of course presented us AlphaFold, where they fold all the protein structures in known to nature. Now we have isomorphic labs getting a 2.1 billion investment to really design those medicines. So we're not searching for a key in a giant dark warehouse to get some medicine done. This is really turning on the lights, mapping the room, and designing whatever you need right away, high speed.
Yes. I don't know if you already clearly expressed this, but this is about solving all disease, right?
I said that, but good for the highline.
Okay, yeah. Okay, so it is my fault because I didn't listen properly enough while I was opening the page to visualize what you were saying. But solving all disease, and let that just sink in for a moment. Of course, you and me both probably, I know for myself, I haven't seen your recent keynote, but I keep telling people over the next decade, we will solve all disease. We will eradicate aging. We're going to get rid of all cancer. We're going to solve Parkinson's. So, and again, they're coming back to these students. If these students knew all of this, they would never have booed Eric Schmidt off stage. I just can't believe it. But they don't know this. They don't see this. They only, have a wrong impression. And that's because this is not highlighted enough. But this is no longer science fiction, right? This is not some crazy idea of some crazy person who thinks this. This is now widely accepted. And there's now 2.1 billion investment saying this can be real. That's massive. It's massive. And it's going to happen. AI is going to mass solve all science, and these people are working to realize that.
And maybe this also comes via avenues like in the beginning with the eye lenses. It comes via an avenue that you might not expect. Maybe somebody will get sick, will get cancer, and gets the first AI treatment, and that's the way that it kind of will explode upon the scene. And of course, all the big medical companies are jumping on this and investing quite heavily on that.
Well, I don't want to keep sticking feathers up Peter Diamandis, but Dr. David Sinclair, the world's most foremost scientist on aging, who is now actually already doing clinical trials on reversing aging that are so far very successful, he got funding cuts, massive funding cuts last year from the Trump administration because Trump was trying to punish woke universities, right? So that resulted in Dr. David Sinclair getting these funding cuts. Now, that was horrible. That was just not the right way to go about that, I think. And I was very worried what impact it would have. And I'm still worried what research has been killed, what incredibly massive potential projects were killed off by that we will never know about. But what I do love is that Dr. David Sinclair basically went to Peter Diamandis and was on the podcast and said, well, we're having some trouble with our funding. And X Prize stepped in and Peter Diamandis stepped in. And now lately he came back and he said, wow, we're in a better place than we've ever been before because we've received so much funding for what we're doing. And this gives me great hope and great opportunity because if you know Dr. David Sinclair, his ultimate goal and all his funding, everybody that's invested knows this, is to make these pills super cheap so that anybody can have them. Yeah. So that anybody who's getting old can take a treatment for a few dollars and basically reverse aging and cure all of their diseases that are related to aging.
Yeah, and I couldn't agree more. Hopefully that's the goal. But then we get back to that sharing. So far, if you get your medicine here, other than paracetamol and some other drugs, most of all these drugs and, how do you call that, additional...
pharmaceuticals?
Exactly.
Treatments
are quite expensive, right? And getting more expensive and priced. And
yeah, but that's also the system we're living in. And, we created a capitalistic world where profit is the end all and goal and end all of everything we do. And en masse, people believe that this is the final system, or at least people don't stop to think about that. They don't stop to think, okay, wait, is this the beginning or the end? And I think that is the realization that we need to have as a species, as humanity. We need to understand that we are not at the ending, we're at the beginning. Capitalism is not the greatest system of all systems and the final system to ever be invented. Democracy is not the greatest system and the final system to ever be invented. There are better systems and we can still invent them. And maybe we didn't invent them yet because the circumstances didn't allow for that. Maybe we needed to progress to a different level of technological capabilities and a different level of awareness to enable this, right? It's almost like a game, right? You can get that Super Saiyan power up, but you first need to unlock it, right? And we have now unlocked it. That means we can now move forward. And we are in the first 1% of human civilizational progress if we want to. And that means we have another 99% to explore over the next 10,000 or 100,000 or a million years, right? That's the way we should be looking at this. Amen.
Yeah. that becomes our new bridge to the next topic. All right. Next topic. I saw new release from NVIDIA, a new open world model called Sana WM. I don't know if you have it open there. There are some demo videos where you can see, because so far we have been showing Genie in open world generation. But again, this is from one picture, prompt driven, 1 minute complete video generation. If you scroll a little bit down, you get more high res in 24 seconds, and even a slider on something that we talked about earlier as well on the pod. How do you call that? The refiner effect.
Do you need to scroll further? Oh.
Yeah, the refiner effect is a little bit further down.
20-second worlds, same first frame, different paths. Man, there's so many. Oh, refiner effect, yes. Can I make this full screen? Oh, but I can see, maybe I can. Yes.
And I know what your experience is in your keynotes, but similar to the topic we just discussed, if you make a statement like all diseases will be cured, people look a little bit at you, well, we have to see about that. Same with this type of technology. The moment you, image generation, everybody gets. Movie generation, everybody gets. The moment you go to world models, people go like, oh, that's for gamers. But there's so much more applications in here that you can think of, right? And the last presentation we did was for a media house. So what can a media house do with this? So everybody can view a movie or a sport event or a news event, or maybe you have a sitcom from a completely different perspective, or a news article where people can play around with their camera perspective, how they want to participate in news. And that's a whole new wave of technology that is quickly upon us, aside from the robot training, which is also a great application, of course, from this technology.
Yeah, and I think what you're really seeing is you're seeing convergence, right? Because yes, on the one hand, we have models that can generate a video or an image, but these things are generating whole worlds. And I think that what you'll see further down the line is that those technologies, they merge. And what you will see then is that instead of generating a video frame by frame, you generate a world, big or small, and then in that world, which is then consistent, you will create whatever you want, whether it be a scene or an event or a video or a game or whatever. You can create anything. And so what you'll basically see is that content will become super fluid, because you will be able to create a game and you will be able to use that game world to generate your movie, your video, your series, give people custom experiences. This is going to, this is just the beginning, because we haven't even touched on true, creativity when it comes to how we can explore this and do new things with that. And that's going to be truly incredible. And also from a practical point of view, right? Because another thing I saw this week is that somebody posted a GitHub repo, which allows you, which is basically a vibe coded kind of software that allows you to take any photo and turn it into a complete 3D representation of a space. Yeah. Now, I cannot begin to express how massive this is, because we've had 5-6 years now of developing of Gaussian splats, and we had all of these new technologies. We had Nerve for a while there, which then kind of went off stage again because it had some drawbacks. But all of that is around, you scan objects or a room, you take a lot of pictures, and then you can turn that room into a 3D environment from lots of pictures or a video, and it takes a lot of effort. And now somebody basically created something that just takes a single photograph and turns that photograph into a complete 3-dimensional world. And that means that you can take any photograph of any space, turn it into a 3D world, and what you can do then is you can put an AI in it with a robot body, and you can train it in that world. Yeah. Right? And this stuff is all happening at the same time. So everybody, it's me again, quick intermezzo. You know the drill by now, because I tend to do this. So super interesting. I'm listening to this. It's now Saturday, the 23rd, and we recorded this podcast last Monday, the 18th. And it's so crazy because I didn't know at the time. I actually wasn't even aware that Google I/O was just 2 days away. And literally 2 days later, in the evening, when I was in Lithuania for a keynote for Telia Technology, I was listening to Google I/O in my hotel. And this is literally what Google announced with Gemini Omni. Gemini Omni is meant to be an AI that can turn any input into any output. So what we were discussing on Monday as what we expected to happen literally was announced as a product being launched by Google 2 days later. And that is just so incredible because it just shows the incredible speed at which these things are going, that whenever me and Patrick have an idea, or when we start to feel like we understand where the future is headed, what things are coming, it's no longer just years away. Sometimes it's a matter of months or weeks, and sometimes, like just now, it is just days away, and then bam, there it is, and it's just absolutely crazy.
It's all happening.
So,
And if
yeah.
people think, well, that's far out, it's pretty close by as well. Because if you go, I'm now looking for a new house. So you make a picture of the space and you immediately get a 3D environment of the space that is quite accurate. And then you can decorate it to your liking with AI on the fly. So something like an interior design is also a job that is almost replaced by AI. You want certain colors, okay, bang, and immediately you have a very nice interior design based on that single photo of a house that you just visited.
Yeah. Yeah, and there's going to be so many applications of this kind of technology that we can't even fully comprehend or imagine yet. And yeah, that's just crazy.
Talking about robots, Aragorn, let's bring up your favorite one, because there has been a marathon recording of Figure at an assembly line. Here we go, running for 13 hours. Is that what I see?
113 hours, 44 minutes now. And so what you see here is 3 robots, because you see the other 2 in the background. There's Bob, Gary, and what's the last name? I think it's Bob, Gary, and Ross. I think Bob, Gary, and Ross. I'm not 100% certain. Bob, Gary, and Ross, I think. And basically, what started out as an experiment by Figure to see if they could at least fill an 8-hour shift is now turned into an absolute crazy marathon. So the 2 robots in the back are charging. And basically, the robots are continuously sorting packages. And when they're almost empty, or they go to the charging dock. And so what they're trying to find out is how long it will take before it breaks down or starts malfunctioning. So far, there's no malfunctioning.
So far it goes,
So this is
and the battery life is about 5 hours, right? So every 5 hours they have to change, they change the robot, basically. That goes quickly, yeah.
Yeah, but the thing you have to keep in mind is that it's going 24/7, right? So one of these robots right now costs $120,000. That's the price of the current Figure 3. So if you buy 2, you spend $240,000. Now, these are connected to Wi-Fi, but they don't need to be. They can keep operating even when they're offline, because everything is in the robot, the GPUs, the AI, or everything runs on the platform. So once it's properly set up and trained, it can keep going as long as, as long as the rest of the factory is going. And I think that this is a wonderful example of how fast this tech is progressing, because you can now buy for $240,000, you can buy basically 2 employees that will keep working 24/7 and only need kind of, maybe repairs and maintenance once a month. And there's just no way for humans to compete with that. And I know that, again, this sounds scary and people don't like that idea, but this is great. This is
maybe some people
amazing.
from the Arizona University wanted to take this job.
Yeah, I'm sure they were all looking forward to being sorting packages. I'm sure they were, yes.
No. So let's wrap it up with one more robot news, because, again, last time we spoke, you explained how important the hands are and the actuators. But yeah, there's also news about new and improved hands every day now. If you just show these new ones from a company called Xynova, if I pronounce that correctly. And they have more, the thing here is that, of course, these are better hands, but they are also more tactile. Or whatever that may be for a robot, right?
Yeah, and I think it's important here to note that, of course, I was in Shenzhen 3 weeks ago, and I was at a massive robotics conference, and I saw hundreds of companies making hands. And all of these hands are built so that they're modular, so that they can be basically put on any robot, which is also interesting because China is doing really well. So interesting to know here is that Figure and X1, which used to be Norwegian based, which is now also US based. Figure and Optimus and X1 are all probably the world's leading companies in terms of robotic technology and sophistication and capabilities. X1 doesn't have fully neural net controlled robots yet. They are using the remote control people, right? So they're leasing out their robots, and then somebody remote controls it, which got some lashback when it came out. But that's not the point I want to make. The point I want to make is that all these companies, Figure, X1, and Optimus, Tesla, they all create all the parts in-house. So they're completely vertically integrated to do everything themselves. They don't source anything from the outside. And in fact, that means that X1 actuators are actually the best actuators on the market by every standard. China is going a completely different route. I was very impressed with the robots in China, but the robots in China are all modular built with parts from 100 different suppliers, which is why in Shenzhen alone, there's 30,000 companies building robotic parts, actuators, servos, hands. And it's interesting to see there that the US and China are going to very different paths. Very, very different paths when it comes to how they're approaching
One from
this.
China sounds to me more anti-fragile.
Yes, it is more anti-fragile, but it also comes with a massive amount of complications. I mean, the same reason Tim Cook ultimately started to build Apple Silicon is to integrate it vertically, because it meant, a faster time to market, a better performance and integration into the rest of the system. So, no matter how much I do not like Apple, their philosophy around building a very smooth, properly operating system by getting it all integrated and doing it all your own way, that works. Google is now doing the same with AI. Why is Google capable of competing with NVIDIA when it comes to MPUs versus NVIDIA's GPUs? It's because Google is already building the whole stack, right? When you order at Google, you might need a few more chips to get the same throughput, but the whole stack is fully vertically integrated, which makes it significantly cheaper to buy Google and then put it to work. And so there are real benefits to that. Both ways have benefits.
And Elon does that in the same direction
exactly.
as well.
Yeah. And it will be very interesting to see how this will progress. Very interesting.
And that's what we're going to follow in the coming weeks for all the future episodes of Singularity Service. I think we have come to the end of this episode, Aragorn. So thanks for listening or viewing. If you want to keep track of everything that we do at Innovation Network, the best way is to subscribe at innovationnetwork, one word, .substack.com and become a Singularity Serve yourself.
Absolutely.
I have one request for you. If you like what we're doing, please help us by liking our post, sharing it with friends, sharing it with your boss. Maybe he, she, or them want to do a 5-code masterclass with us. And like they say in the Netherlands,
see you later.